Welcome, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to Moravian College for the college's 9th Peace and Justice Scholar in Residence, Claude AnShin Thomas. I'm Cynthia Casso, I'm the provost, and I'm so delighted to welcome you all here today. We're especially very pleased to welcome our community members. It's a great audience, students, faculty, and staff. It's lovely to see you all here. The critical issues that we try to address on our campus through workshops, seminars, and presentations like this are indeed serious and affect us all. And so we're really committed to including you, the community, in our conversation. So I'm so happy to see so many of you. Thank you for coming. This year's Peace and Justice Scholar in Residence is co-sponsored by the Peace and Justice Studies program at Moravian, the Religion and Sociology departments, the Healthy Minds Student Club, and In Focus. I would like to take just a moment or two to talk about In Focus. The goal of In Focus is for Moravian College to realize the promise of becoming an institution, and not just seeming to be an institution, but actually becoming an institution that engages its students in the study of important questions that challenge humanity today as we look towards the future. As such, the program has 4 themes. Many of you students and faculty know this, and these themes rotate yearly. These are poverty and inequality, sustainability, healthcare, and war and peace. Grappling with these problems from multidisciplinary perspectives better prepares our graduates to contribute to both a just society and a vibrant democracy. This year's theme is poverty and inequality, and particularly the global challenges of poverty and inequality. If you had an opportunity to read Claude AnShin Thomas's book, you will have noted that inequality of various sorts is a necessary condition of war. Thus, his topic, which addresses inequality, violence, and war, speaks to the issues we hold as critical to our ability to build a more just world. Let's listen now. Thank you.
Let me also take just a minute at this beginning, hello, to offer another word of welcome. I'm Kelly Denton-Borhaug, Associate Professor in Religion, and together with Associate Professor Daniel Jasper, I co-direct the Peace and Justice Studies program. And we're so delighted to have you all here. I especially want to thank AnShin and Claude AnShin for their presence. Tonight you're going to hear some very sober discussion, but with this 9th Peace and Justice Scholar in Residence, there's also been a remarkable and beautiful spirit of joyfulness that we are catching on to this week. Just yesterday, when Claude AnShin and AnShin and a small group of us came into this space to check it out for tonight and the layout, at the end of that time, I turned to Claude AnShin and I said, "Do you think there's anything else that we need?" And he gave me a thoughtful look and he said, "Flowers." I just love that. And so there are flowers, and they're from my own garden. There are books for purchase at the conclusion of the program tonight. Please also consider leaving a donation for the Zaltha organization. This supports Claude AnShin and AnShin. As monks who have taken vows of mendicancy, they completely live on the donations that others are kind enough to offer. And these donations support their sustenance as well as their peace-building work. There is going to be a time for Q&A after Claude AnShin speaks. We'll have 2 ushers with mics, and we just ask you to raise your hand, and an usher will bring you a microphone for your brief question, so that we can hear from as many people as possible. In addition to all of the other supporters that have been mentioned, I also want to thank the English department for their support. Lisa Johnson, who has provided incredible infrastructure support from this evening, and also Dr. Ron Klein for his support. Please look at the Peace and Justice Studies brochure, especially students. We would love to welcome more students into our program. There are classes you can sign up for this fall to begin your Peace and Justice Studies minor. Speak to Dr. Jasper or to me if you have any questions. Finally, many thanks to Michael Mellett. He is a Moravian College senior majoring in political science and psychology, And it is largely due to his efforts and to his deep desire to bring Claude AnShin Thomas to our campus that we are all gathered here this evening. Michael, come on up.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to first begin just by echoing both the thanks and recognitions of both Dr. Denton-Borhaug and Provost Casso. I'd also like to extend my special thanks specifically to Dr. Denton-Borhaug for her passionate enthusiasm and leadership in making all of this happen, and especially for offering me the opportunity to be here tonight to introduce our ninth Peace and Justice Scholar in Residence, Claude AnShin Thomas. Claude AnShin was born in 1947 and grew up in a small town called Waterford, Pennsylvania. The son of a World War II veteran and the grandson of a World War I veteran, Claude AnShin was born into a legacy of war, as many have been. Claude AnShin's early experiences in many ways laid the groundwork for the violence that he would experience in military training and in combat during the Vietnam War. In his book, At Hell's Gate, Claude AnShin shares with us an early life deeply rooted in violence and trauma well before his experiences of combat were even conceivable realities. In his own words, quote, "For my first 17 years, almost all my experiences watered the seeds of violence in me. War was everywhere," end quote. Such is the familial legacy of war, perpetrated by those who were also its unwitting victims. Each generation passing the gauntlet to the next in what he is often referred to as the war before the war. Upon his return home from active duty, Claude AnShin was confronted by a culture devoid of any context within which to understand his experiences, one that was too unaware to understand the soul injury that war inflicts on those we send into it. Like other Vietnam veterans, he had to assimilate into a culture which condemned his actions and dismissed and delegitimized his suffering. He was told, "All that's over now. You should forget it. You survived. Get on with your life." In his own words, Claude AnShin says, quote, "There was no after the war for me. My life as a survivor of Vietnam was an ongoing war." I first met Claude AnShin in 2010 when he stayed in my home. We were hosting him there during his visit to a VA hospital in New York. Only 15 years old then, I remember being both perplexed and intrigued by this man's presence in my home. I recall sitting at our kitchen table across from one another. Words were exchanged, of course, but they are not what has stuck with me all these years. Rather, I recall most vividly the way Claude AnShin made me feel sitting across from him in contemplative silence. Each smile, each glance, each moment of silence felt like a friendly invitation to be with him in that moment at that table. I was mostly unsure of what to do with that invitation. All I knew is that something about this man's presence requested that I experience myself in a way that I hadn't done before and that I did not know was possible. It made me squeamish, unsure of myself, and nervous. The struggle of that experience now strikes me with a sharp poignancy, the gravity of which I've only just begun to appreciate. I am struck not because I am moved by how far I've come or by how much I've learned, but because it is a struggle which has remained central in my life, that of being at peace with my unpeacefulness. In his memoir, Claude AnShin tells us, quote, "The way to healing is through our suffering. Looking deeply at the nature of ourselves, talking freely about how we feel, creating a language of feelings, and using it to begin to break the silence that is so necessary to protect and sustain cycles of aggression," end quote. Additionally, he adds, "We have the ability to pierce the darkness of denial, our societies and our own. We have to talk, we must talk." It is with this human imperative in mind that I invite you to join me in welcoming our ninth Peace and Justice Scholar in Residence, Claude AnShin Thomas, and his student and assistant, Vipka Kenshin. Thank you.
Is it on? Oh. They made me totally nervous. There's an amplifier here. And they said that I'm not permitted to go beyond this curtain. It's like I went, I can't sit talking. I can't talk sitting down. That's like almost impossible. So, but I'm going to try. Yes. I'm going to do an incense offering. To do that, I'm going to turn off my microphone so I don't buzz out your ears. I'm going to really make an effort to do this sitting down. I don't know if I'll be successful. And the reason it's such a challenge for me is that the topics that I address are, I'm just so passionate about them. They're so critically important to the truth of existence. This is awkward. Yeah. Well, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. If you, I don't know, what's the topic? Oh, it's here. So the topic is watering the seeds of peace, facing inequality, violence, and war. It's a lot. Thank you, Michael. I normally don't listen. But there wasn't a room. I was just off here behind the curtain. And it's very interesting to me to see, to hear some years later, the impacts that interactions can have. I give up. I'm a Zen Buddhist monk. I'm ordained in a Japanese lineage. There are two primary schools of Buddhism, or dominant schools in Zen Buddhism in Japan, Rinzai and Soto. Now, those delineations don't actually exist. People just have created them to sort of create some sort of, to attempt to define the differences between the ways in which essential teachings are presented. Rinzai Zen is often concentrated on sort of breaking through the traps of the intellect. Soto Zen is essentially the same thing, we just do it differently. So our focus is just sitting. Now, people that understand meditation as a particular form. They think meditation is sitting in some holy posture, like all erect and being quiet and doing all of this. And that's a misunderstanding of what meditation is. Meditation is a way of living. It's not something particular that we do, but it's a way in which we engage with our life. It's about waking up to the ways, it's becoming conscious. I'll use terms. If you don't understand a term that I've used, jot it down, you get a chance to ask me later. To become conscious of the ways in which we have been conditioned to view the world. If you take a few moments and just reflect on the ways in which you view the world, the ways in which you hold the world to be an absolute fact, I will tell you right now that those views are not yours. The views that we hold on to as absolute facts are views that have been passed on to us. We have been infused with them without even knowing that we've been infused with them. In Buddhist language, they refer to this as karma, the karma we have inherited. So there's two streams of that. There's the karma we have inherited from our family generations. There's the karma we have inherited from our collective conscious. The collective conscious is what I refer to as the various institutions that make up society and culture: economics, entertainment, politics, commerce, and etc. Each of those institutions are comprised of several elements. Each of those elements are comprised of several individuals, because these institutions and elements have no existence outside of the individuals who come together to create them. They give them substance and existence. Each of those individuals brings with them their own conditioning. We live in ignorance of that conditioning. Somehow the word ignorance is viewed at negatively, like I'm supposed to know everything. The knowing of everything is an intellectual trap. It's impossible to know everything. But it's not impossible to know everything. I actually know everything when I realize that I don't know anything. No, it's not. This is not a twist of words. Understand something, please. The words that I speak are essentially meaningless. They don't mean anything. I use the words to paint a picture, to point in a particular direction. People grasp onto the words and look for meaning and understanding. That's not the point of language. The point of language is to paint a picture, to point in a direction, to give you some idea of a way in which you can begin to engage with the very truth of our existence, which has been passed on to us from family generations throughout eternity. And they say, it's another interesting part about Buddhist practice is, and it's what drew me to Buddhist practice, is the interconnected reality of which we are a part of. That nothing is independent from anything else, that all things are somehow intertwined. All things. I'm talking all things. I'm not talking just about person to person. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about my relationship with my car. Well, not my car. I don't have a car. I'm not allowed to have a car. By vow, I'm not permitted to own anything. I'm not permitted to work gainfully. I'm by vow a mendicant. And in the United States, the word mendicant, people go, what's a mendicant? You know, I mean, I guess if you study religion, somewhere you've read about it. But in truth, a mendicant, by vow, I'm not permitted to work, I'm not permitted to live residentially, I'm not permitted to have sort of all the trappings that people consider necessary to be safe and secure. No insurance, no life insurance. For example, Kenshin is my assistant. She's not my girlfriend. And this is not a partner look. But I couldn't be more deeply connected to someone. Kenshin's been assisting me for 18 years. I've known her for 20. Doesn't stay connected to me because of some vows she's taken. She is not connected to me because of some arbitrary idea of commitment. She's not connected to me because she's going to inherit my money. I don't have any. She's not connected to me for my life insurance policy. I don't have one. I'm not permitted. I live on the premise of the generosity of the larger commitment to which I serve. Usually when I close, I do a short talk about Buddha. The clothes that I wear represent my commitment to be of service to Buddha. Now, Buddha is not, some of you may have seen the icons, some of you may have the idea that the icon is Buddha. Some of you may have the idea that to be in service to Buddha means I worship what this icon represents. And in fact, that's a misunderstanding. Buddha is not the fat guy's name. Buddha is just the name which means awake. It's just a word. It's a word that means awake. So when I say that my clothes represent my commitment to serve Buddha, it's my commitment to serve your awakened nature. Everyone here, everyone, is already awakened. Everyone here is already enlightened. Enlightenment is not something external to us. It's not some utopian idea or a place that we can arrive to where suddenly there's nothing ever uncomfortable that I have to deal with. It's not the bliss that I sought each time I stuck a needle in my arm and shot myself up with heroin. Yes, I'm a drug addict. I don't use drugs anymore. But here's the trap of all of that. It was mentioned that I'm a former soldier. I served in the United States Army. I enlisted while I was still in high school at the age of 17, delayed enlistment program. I went to Fort LaBeouf High School. I don't know if any of you are from the western part of the state or not. It was mentioned that I was raised in Waterford, Pennsylvania. My father was a school teacher. Not only was he a World War II veteran, he was a school teacher. He taught U.S. history and driver education. My father never spoke authentically about his military experience. He only told the heroic stories about going out and partying and getting drunk and chasing women and getting tattoos. But he never told the truth of his experience. So I was always programmed from the beginning with this mythological notion of military service or service to my country. By the time I was 5 years old, I could already sing all of the hymns of the various military branches of service. Because my dad used to sing me to sleep with those things. We'd sit on the porch and we'd sing the Navy hymn. We'd sit on the porch and we'd sing the battle hymn, the Army battle hymn. I was an athlete in school. The language of athletes, the language of athletics or the experience of competitive athletics is paramilitary training. Listen to the language. Now, I'm saying these things not to admonish or not to in any way belittle I'm saying them only to bring consciousness into the reality of the experience. We so often want to step over these realities. But listen to the language. Listen to the language that people use. I mean, so I was an all-county football player my junior and senior year. And when they would write up in the newspaper about me, they'd say if they were going to charge a hill, they would want to have me in the group. And, it was always about defeating your enemy. It was always about, I can't even remember all the language. Now, you hear it all the time. You see it now. When you watch the game before it starts, you get the flyovers and you go. They parade out people in uniform. It's painful for me to watch that. because you don't know the truth of military service. You just don't know it. And still, even people who have had the military experience are unwilling to talk about the truth of that. I mean, they're willing to talk about their version of the truth of that, but to talk about the truth of it. Yes, my experience in military, some of the closest relations that I ever had in my life were in combat. Because in combat, I didn't care, it didn't matter what color you were, it didn't matter what religion you were, it didn't matter what you believed. It didn't matter where you came from, it didn't matter your economic status, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered is that you would do your job and I could depend on you. That's all that mattered. It was a simplistic kind of relation that wasn't cluttered with all of this other nonsense. And I say nonsense because in a combat situation, that was all nonsense. It didn't matter. What mattered is staying alive and keeping your friends alive. The politics of the situation didn't matter. We weren't fighting for any great political ideology. We weren't fighting for all of the ideas or reasons that we were conditioned to believe we were fighting. We were fighting simply to stay alive. We were fighting to keep our friends alive. That was the whole deal. Peace is not what we call peace. Inequality isn't what we call inequality. If we think we know what equality is, because you can't introduce the term inequality without thinking about equality. You can't introduce the term violence without thinking about nonviolence. You can't introduce the term war without thinking about peace. But if we attempt to imagine peace is this, war is this, equality is this, inequality is that, those are only ideas. If we want to know what peace is, if we want to know the truth of equality, then it's incumbent upon us to have a disciplined spiritual practice that transcends theology. It brings us to a place of understanding beyond the intellect. It's in this place where we can be informed what peace is in any given moment. We can be informed what equality is in any given moment. I couldn't love Kenshin I couldn't love someone more than I love her. But I'm not talking about the Romeo and Juliet kind of love. I mean the archetypal love story, Romeo and Juliet. How'd that turn out? I'm telling you, right? But that's the archetypal model. And what happened to me as a child? Right? The conditioning, the war before the war. See, the reality of war is not an isolated incident. It's a collective expression of individual suffering. War is not an external phenomenon. It's an expression of the collective roots of war and violence that exist in each and every one of us. We want to make war something external to us. You realize that with an all-volunteer army, less than 1% of the population bears the brunt of military service. Less than 1%. I'm all in favor of reinstituting the draft. I think everybody ought to be drafted. Everybody, regardless of gender. Everybody should have to register, and everybody should have to serve in some capacity or other. We need to take collective responsibility for the truth of our society and culture. It's easy to wave flags or to protest, to speak out against war and violence and suffering when the burden is not collectively shared. I remember when I came home when I got out of the military hospital. I spent a long time in military hospital. When I got out of military hospital, I remember attempting to talk to people about the truth of, just to talk to them about my service. And because people would say to me, geez, what was it like? And I'd start to talk to them, and you could see they get antsy, they get restless, they start looking at their watch, their eyes would glass over. They'd say, oh, geez, I'd really like to listen, but, I got an appointment, I got to go. You need to hear what the truth of that war experience was, and we who have served have an obligation to speak about that. The truth of peace rests in that collective awareness. It's not an idea. you know, that I wear a Mercedes symbol upside down it's meaningless. Peace, peace is not listening to, being a peace activist is not listening to NPR. It's like, what am I willing to do in my life? What are you willing to do to bring an end to war, violence, and suffering? What are you willing to do? That's why I do what I do. That's why I'm dressed in this way, to be of service to your enlightened nature. So if I can support you in this process, let me. That's why I do this. I just came back from Colombia, South America. I have an acquaintance. I support a guy. He's in the military. He's a special operations guy, and he's been, 15 years, I think, already. He's been deployed 8 times, and he's committed to this career. When we talk, it's very interesting the points at which we connect, because my commitment is not other than what he writes on his coin. Anything, any place, any time. Simply, I don't take a gun. Because you cannot achieve peace and stability at the point of a gun. It's impossible. It can't happen. You can't bomb people into submission. Well, you can. You can bomb them into submission. But what happens when you bomb them into a submission is that you've started a process in which the people you bombed into submission are merely going to continue to chew on the fact that they've been repressed, the fact that they've been damaged, and they're going to want to get you back. Cause and effect. See, normally I would walk out into the aisles, but I'm a bit confined here. I mean, I have this amplifier and I have this camera. So I'm going to ask, do you mind coming up here? Yeah, come on up. Tell me your name.
Thomas.
Thomas. Oh, nice to meet you. My last name is Thomas. That's why I smile.
It's a nice name.
I know it is. It's not. No, it's not. It's not nice.
It's not nice.
No, it's great. Yeah.
Okay. Glad we
Okay.
clarified that.
So Thomas, say right now, if I just wall and hit you, what would you do?
Probably swing back.
There you go. I'm glad. Now, it's really interesting because sometimes I will do this with people. I'll say, okay, so what if I haul up and hit you? What would you do? And they go, well, I don't know. Maybe I would just talk to you and see what I could do. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate the candid. No, we're not done yet. What I have failed to neglect, what I've neglected to, what Thomas doesn't know, is that I started the study of martial arts at the age of 14. I studied and taught for 27 years, and I'm officially mastered in 2 styles. And you compile the black belts together, and I have 12 degrees.
Okay.
So I don't practice kicks and punches anymore. So I would never hit you to begin with.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yes, it is good to know. But this is cause and effect. This is a literal understanding of cause and effect. I hit Thomas. Thomas views me as the perpetrator. He sees himself as the victim. And then as the victim, he feels entitled and empowered to hit me back. Right? He's defending himself, right? The moment Thomas hits me back, what happens? He becomes the perpetrator, I become the victim, and it sets in motion this dynamic of, we say, the wheel of karma starts to turn. So we set in motion a certain dynamic that at some point somebody has to step back or we self-destruct. There is no victim, there is no perpetrator. Thomas hits me, and I have to not hit him back. As my commitments rest today, I have to be willing to give up everything so that the world has an opportunity to wake up and to become transformed. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Violence only gets more violence. Anger only gets more anger. Hatred only gets more hatred. Greed only gets more greed. The more you have, the less somebody else has. How many lives are you willing to sacrifice for your latte? How many lives are you willing to sacrifice to keep the price of fuel at a certain level? How many lives are you willing to sacrifice so that you can have fresh bananas? They don't grow bananas. They don't grow bananas in Pennsylvania. Well, that's not true. They might in some greenhouses, but I don't think there's enough. You couldn't grow enough. I mean, it's important that we look at the interconnected reality that we exist in, and not just narrowly look at this small world that revolves around us. Life is more than Moravian. Life is more than Bethlehem. I mean, I wish I could meet some of the people who've been here through the transformation of Bethlehem, some of the generations, people who worked here in the steel mills and then saw the collapse of that industry, who thought the world was going to end. The world didn't end. It didn't end here, it didn't end in Pittsburgh, it didn't end in Youngstown, didn't end in Newcastle. It's changed. But that's the truth of existence as we understand from Buddhist practice. There is no creation, there is no cessation. Existence is constantly in a process of transformation. Everything that was, is, and always will be. It's just in a constant state of transformation. I need to live in that reality. I need not to live in the reality that I was conditioned with, to say that if you disagree with me, you are the enemy and you need to be destroyed. If you disagree with me, and you bring me into a certain set of emotional responses that I deem as uncomfortable, I got to get rid of those. The truth of war. I've written about some of these things. I've had the privilege to have a book published. It's offered out on the table. It's really well written. No. I say that because other people say it. And it's really interesting too, because sometimes I pick it up and I read and I go, wow. You know, it's like I can't imagine that I actually wrote this thing. And I did. The majority of it I wrote with a pen and paper. I don't do that much more anymore. You know, being a 21st century monk, I have a laptop and I do everything on the computer. And I like it a lot better because then I don't have to scratch things out. I can just delete. That's really nice. But at the same time, I'm not attached to that computer. I'm not glued to my cell phone. I didn't even bring my phone. Technology is a great and important tool, can support us in a lot of ways if it doesn't control us. I have a young man that I support. His name is Elliot Smith. You can look for Elliot on Facebook. He lives there. Elliot is an Iraq War veteran. Elliot's right foot was amputated at the age of 21 because of he was run over by a tank. He was directing traffic, and out of a village, and he was hit by the tank. It just shredded his foot. He had a choice to live with it like it was or have it amputated. He chose to have it amputated. When I met Elliot, he was on 3 different kinds of medications. He weighed about 320. He's taller. He's about so tall, but 320. He was pretty portly, he couldn't stay away from illegal drugs. 4 years into my connection with him, and supporting him, giving him just passing on to him the tools that were passed on to me. Elliot's medication free. He hasn't used any illegal drugs, including alcohol, for 4 years. He's back in college. He's finished out a semester and a half, and he's running on a 4-point scale, he's running at a 3.6 average. Now, he did that. I didn't do that. He did that. But that's what Buddhist practice is about. Buddhist practice isn't about salvation in some sort of contemporary view of salvation. Buddhist practice is about providing us with tools that enable us to discover what our salvation is. And I'll tell you, salvation is not in that first fixed pillar drink. It doesn't exist there. That's the illusion of it. I lived 2 years homeless on the streets in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I lived in a burned out car in an alley between 6th Street, between 6th and Liberty, real near to the Strip District. The Strip District is what they call the warehouse district. It's not the other thing. But I lived in a burned out car. And really, I had luxurious accommodation. It was just, I thought I was in heaven there. I had zero responsibilities. The only thing I had to worry about is where I was going to get that next fixed pillar drink. That's all I had to worry about. One day I was injecting drugs, and I had nodded out, and something brought me awake. And what brought me awake is there was a man standing in front of me in a three-piece business suit with his briefcase sitting on the ground, urinating on me. It's the same thing that happened to me when I came home, metaphorically. Because when I came out of the hospital, every time someone identified me as a combat soldier, I became the problem. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get a meaningful job. People wouldn't hire me because I was a crazy Vietnam veteran. I was a baby killer. There was all sorts of attachments put on us. How many people belonging to the National Guard or Reserves who've been deployed multiple times who've lost their homes? They came home, they didn't have work, they weren't able to hold their jobs because they've had multiple deployments. They're working with the real cost of war. And when they turn to the larger society or structure for help, people just turn their backs on them. They wave flags and put up yellow ribbons, but they don't deal with the real cost of war. The real cost of war. We deal with the real cost of war, then we begin to embrace the reality of peace. War is not a solution. It only keeps alive this cycle of violence and suffering. To begin to break that cycle of violence and suffering, I need to be willing to wake up to how I have been conditioned in the world. There was a time in my life when, I'm raised in a small rural farming community in northwest Pennsylvania. I spoke to Professor Denton Borhaug's class on Monday. I was supposed to talk today, but I discovered the class wasn't today, it was yesterday. So I spoke yesterday. And I talked about growing up in this town and that there weren't any people of color in my school, and it's not accurate. There were 2 people of color. So there was a brother and sister. And the brother, the guy was the brother of the 2 was the same class as I was. I can't recall his name right now. But you see, growing up in the community that I grew up in, I was conditioned to be sexist. I'm a male, I'm a white male growing up in this society and culture. We are conditioned to be sexist. We're conditioned to see women in a particular way, just like women are conditioned to see us in a particular way. I'm conditioned to be a racist. I'm conditioned to see people of different colors as inferior to me. On one level, I'm conditioned to see them as inferior. On another level, I'm conditioned to be afraid of them because I'm conditioned that they're superior to me. So this is all this conditioning that I need to wake up to, because through this conditioning, I never touch your humanity, Thomas. I never can see it. I don't want to be a racist. I don't want to be a sexist. I don't want to be discriminating based on your religious affiliations. But I was conditioned to. I was conditioned to also dehumanize the entire population, because I never talked about your religious affiliations. I never talked about Catholics as Catholics. There was always a derogatory expression attached to them. I never talked about Jewish people as Jews. There was always a derogatory attachment. It's the same with all other sorts of religious denominations. I never talked about Jason Stewart. Jason was his name. And no, it's important to me. It's important for me to remember. Because I remember in the locker room one time, it was after gym class or after football or something, and I remember referring to Jason in a particular way. I'm embarrassed. I wouldn't repeat it. I'm embarrassed to talk about it. But it was a racially derogatory term, and it wasn't the N-word. It was another term. And this guy just went bananas. He just started like getting really angry and pushing, and we got in a fight, and I didn't even know why. I did not understand what I had said or the implications of what I said. I didn't know. But see, if I don't accept the truth of my own racism, there isn't any possibility for me to wake up to that, and there isn't any possibility for that topic to become transformed in my life. So I can never see their humanity. Therefore, people of different races, different colors, different national origins, different religions are my enemy because I dehumanize you. That's what I was taught in the military. I was taught to dehumanize a whole race of people because of how they looked. But because I was told they were the enemy. I was also told that what I was doing was attempting to make this place more safe. Those people didn't threaten this place. That's a great illusion. But see, this is the whole point of Buddhist practice, is to support us in waking up to the 10,000 ways in which we view the world through the mask of illusion, thinking that what we've got a hold of is absolute fact. I live every day with the faces of the people that I was responsible for killing. That's the truth of war. Now, not everybody who participates in war has that experience. Not everybody who participates in war has a direct connection to killing. I was a helicopter crew chief and door gunner. I saw the enemy. I saw the Vietnamese. They weren't my enemy. The only way that they were my enemy is that they were told that I was their enemy. They were shooting at me, we were shooting at them. I burned down villages, I killed their animals, I blew up their houses, and I shot their mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and children. That's the truth of war. We came and we landed one time outside of a village. It was supposed to be a pacified village. The helicopters set down. And we would do this from time to time in staging up for another operation. And when we would do this, the people from the villages, the kids mostly, would come flocking out to the helicopters because they're trying to sell us things. They would sell us Coca-Colas or pineapples or bananas. They'd also try to sell us their sisters or their grandmothers or mothers. This is part of the culture of war. It's just like that. There's nothing heroic about it. There's nothing clean about it. And peace is not the antithesis of war. It's living in relationship with the truth of war that exists in us. In this particular incident, there was the group of people, it was becoming a bit unmanageable. And you could, in war, you cannot discriminate where the enemy is. You can't discriminate who might kill you next or what might kill you next, because you just don't know. At a point, they started to get really close, and somebody from one of the other helicopters fired a burst of machine gun fire over their heads. And everyone started to run off. You could see them duck and run and hide. And there was a baby left lying on the ground. And this baby was crying. Now, when a baby cries, what is your instinct? Yes, your instinct is to pick up the child. So people started to move to pick this child up. And I had this thought. This is called one of these moments of clarity. I had this thought, don't pick up the child. But before I could get that out of my mouth, somebody picked up the child and there was an explosion. Now, for years I thought I had it in my mind that this child had been booby-trapped. That it was there with the intention that somebody would pick it up, it would explode, and it would kill people. The child was booby-trapped. I don't know if it was or wasn't. The truth is that somebody could have thrown a grenade, it could have been a mortar attack, something could have happened. But I picked myself up off the ground because I got knocked down by the explosion and my chest just hurt. I checked myself for wounds and I had blood on me, I had blood on my face. I wasn't sure if I was wounded or not. But in Vietnam, we didn't have body armor. We had, they called these flak jacket things. And I reached inside my flak jacket and there was the foot of that child. It really, it hit me so hard, broke a couple ribs here. Now, war is not clean business. This is the truth of war. And this is the truth that we need to see. I don't say this to shock people. I say this because we are the light at the tip of the candle. I grew up, my father's generation, what did they say? They said, you can't talk about this stuff. You have to spare the people who didn't fight. They don't need to hear this stuff. But the larger truth is, you do need to hear this stuff. We all need to understand the truth of war, violence, and suffering. And you realize now, let's say 12 years, Iraq and Afghanistan, there have been somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 American deaths. Just American deaths. I'm not talking about the tens of thousands of Iraqis that have been killed and Afghanis. We're not talking about the tens of thousands that have been wounded. I mean, crippled, maimed. We're not talking about them. We're talking about just between 5,000 and 6,000 U.S. deaths. There's a violence study done out of Harvard University. And what this violence study revealed was that between 33,000 and 38,000 people a year are killed in this country with handguns. Now, let's take the smaller number, 33,000, and multiply that by 12. And see what the number is. And compare that with between the 5,000 and 6,000 that have been killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. What's that say about what's going on here in this country? It's a war by any other name. An essential part of my practice has been pilgrimage. I walk from place to place. So I walk in robes without money. I beg for everything. I'm committed to the fact that if people don't offer me a place to stay, they don't offer me food to eat, we sleep outside, we don't eat. And then we walk to the next place. We walk between 18 and 20 miles a day. In 2004, I walked from the North Bridge in Concord, Massachusetts, the site of the first battle of the American Revolution. I walked to Washington, D.C., to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I wanted to do a service at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, but the Park Service wouldn't let me. Well, I understand their reasons. So they wouldn't let me do it there. So I moved over here. And then the same ranger came up and said, no, you can't do it here either. I said, okay. So I didn't do it there. I went over here. So what happened is I finally got the service done before the park ranger got me. But it's because, and it wasn't, I'm not here to sell you Buddhism. I'm not here to convert people. The great thing about Buddhist practice is you don't have to believe in anything. There isn't any conversion. I mean, you're all already Buddhist. You just don't know it. But the truth is that we don't need more Buddhists. We don't need more Buddhists in the world. There's already too many. We need more Buddhas. We need more people who are willing to live differently. You want to bring an end to war, violence, and suffering? Then stop supporting the institutions of war, violence, and suffering. What is a simple way to do that? Stop eating meat, fish, and poultry. It's incredible if we stop eating meat, fish, and poultry, the impact that would also have on the environment. I asked Professor DB, and I asked the students in the class, what's the average life expectancy of a cow? And of course, it immediately got intellectually complicated. This is a university. the average life expectancy of a cow is 26 years. If you let it, if you just let the thing live. But the average life of a male cow is about 4. Now, to support a cow, one cow, it takes about 26 acres of land to support one cow. With that same 26 acres of land, you could grow enough grain to feed 10,000 people. One cow. I mean, how many people does one cow feed even if you killed it? We've lost contact with the truth of how we sustain ourselves. You go to the supermarket, you see all those cuts of meat. We don't even have a connection with where that comes from. So I encourage everyone here, every one of you, to go and visit a slaughterhouse. Spend a day there. Go and visit the place. See what happens. Be willing to be very present with what's happening there. Watch those cows. Listen to them as they're herded in the line and as they're killed. And then watch the process of butchering them and cutting them up. It's an institution of war, violence, and suffering. I want my life to be different. What am I willing to do? I stopped eating meat, fish, and poultry 35 years ago or more. Now, I must admit my reason for stopping had nothing to do with ethics. It had everything to do with a certain group of people that I wanted to associate with, and they were all hippie-likes and not eating meat, and there were a couple of young women there that I liked. So I wanted to be cool, so I wanted them to like me, so I just said, I don't eat meat. I had to be like them, right? And I didn't really eat meat, fish, and poultry, except every now and then I'd slip into McDonald's and have a fish sandwich, on the side. But I didn't tell anybody. I finally just did stop, and I remember about 6 or 8 years into this, somebody asked me, why do you not eat meat, fish, or poultry? And I didn't even think about it. The word just came out of my mouth, I don't want to support the killing. And I remember when I said it, I broke out in a sweat. I was somehow embarrassed about that. But it is the truth. Another thing, what are you willing to do to not support the institutions of killing? Stop drinking alcohol. In 2014, 1,700,000 and some odd thousand were killed in automobile accidents. Over 65% of those were alcohol related. Tonight, here in Bethlehem, within a mile of this place, there will be domestic violence related incidents directly related to alcohol. Some kid's going to be slapped around by a parent under the influence of alcohol. I pick up one drink of alcohol and I support the industry that produces it. By supporting the industry that produces it, I am responsible then for every death related to people under the influence. Now, with my intellect, this is the danger of intellect. With my intellect, I can shape this. I can shape the world in any way I want. I can say, oh, that doesn't apply to me. It's just nonsense. He's a monk. He's just his vows, and he's probably a prohibitionist anyway. And what's he know? And again, I can create all these. I can create these worlds and worlds and worlds with my intellect. 1 million Jews were killed in Auschwitz. That's where I was ordained. 1 million Jews were killed in Auschwitz because they were viewed as racially inferior. Intellectually, they were viewed as racially inferior. I don't know how many 6 million were killed in the attempt to exterminate the race out of an idea, the idea of racial inferiority or racial superiority. You can't deal with one without the other. Those racial laws, the foundation of those racial laws came from the United States. There was a study done in the turn of the century, the 19th century, from 19 and 20. It was a study done by an insurance company it was a study put together to support this insurance company declining black Americans from becoming insured, declaring them as racially inferior. It was a technically supported study. Those were the laws that were used by the National Socialists as the foundation of their racial laws in Europe in the Second War. The model for the concentration camps came from the United States. In the Civil War, Andersonville. If you don't know about Andersonville, please read about it. It was a horrific place. But it's what happens when we lose context of the interconnected reality of which we are a part of. If we want to understand peace, if we want to understand equality, if we want to understand violence, we have to wake up to the roots of war, inequality, and violence within us. Because that's where it starts, right here within us, in the subtle ways in which it manifests itself. That's the point of a disciplined spiritual practice. It's about taking the attention from the external, bringing it back to self, inviting more silence into our life, walking a bit more slowly, and living a life that's consequent. If we want the world to be different, it can be if we're willing to live differently. So what are you willing to do, and how can I help? That's what I'm invited to do today. Since a young age, I've wanted to be of service. That's why I joined the military. I just didn't know how. I didn't have any guidance. Today, I have that opportunity. I live a life committed to the people who've died in wars. Because when I was sitting one time in silence, I had this clear understanding that, I thought for the longest time after the war, I thought that those who died in the war were the lucky ones. Because they didn't have to live with the real cost of the war. You do understand that at least 22 people a day who've served in the military kill themselves every day, at least. Now those are of the states that report these sorts of suicides. Out of 50 states, only 20 report. Now these are numbers that come from the Veterans Administration, and they're noted for downplaying these kinds of numbers. 22 a day of us kill ourselves. We want the world to be different. It can be. We can learn to live at peace with our unpeacefulness if we're willing to live differently. That's why I'm here. It's entirely possible to bring it into war in our lifetime. The war ends here. You're not my problem. Well, at least not right now. You're not my problem. That I see you as a problem is a manifestation of my own projections. I want the world to be different. That's why we're here at this educational institution. That's why we're learning. If you're studying here just to make more money, then I don't see anything not okay about that. But then what are you going to do with that money? Put it to good use. There are people who need our support. The world, we can be the great country that we are if we're willing to really raise the standard of the people around us. That's the point of spiritual practice. That's the roots of peace. Right now I've talked enough to you of what I want to do, and it's the most important part of the evening, is to open up to your questions. You have an opportunity now to ask me any question you want. Nothing is out of bounds, providing it's a question and not a comment. I need you to ask your questions in 12 words or less. Oh, you can do that. Come on. Wait, this is a high-end liberal arts school, man. 12 words or less, a piece of cake. So any question you want, 12 words or less, and please be direct and to the point. If you have a hard time getting to your question, then I will support you. If you can't get to your question, then we'll move on. So, questions? Go ahead.
What do you think about drones and
What?
how they affect warfare?
Well, I don't think about them much. No, really, truthfully, I just don't think about them much. You know, I think the whole notion of sanitized warfare is a bit funny. Funny not in a ha-ha kind of way, but funny in a peculiar, psychopathic, psychotic kind of way. Because, interestingly enough, the people who sit back in the United States who fly those drones are as affected as I was by actually seeing the people that I shot. But they have a more difficult time in putting together why did they feel like they feel? How come they feel so unclean and so dirty? Why are they so confused? Because they haven't actually been in combat. I have a person that I support. He flew an F-16 in Iraq. And this guy's flying this thing at 625 miles an hour, 100 feet off the ground. Whoa, man. Yeah? And I tell you, this I admire his courage to be willing to live differently. Because he was so profoundly affected. He was there's two seats. He's the back seat, so his responsibility was to fly the bombs, guide the bombs in to blow them up. It's like a drone. You guide the bomb and it blows things up. It just tears them up. I even work with people who load those bombs onto planes, who load the bombs onto these drones and things. And they're so profoundly affected because we know, that we understand, and at some point, the understanding of how we have, the consequences of our actions is unavoidable. We attempt to avoid it. I mean, I attempted to avoid it for years by using social anesthetics, drugs. Alcohol was a legal social anesthetic, but then illegal drugs and prescription medications. You know, I had to learn. I had to really learn how to be uncomfortable. I had to learn how to work with these uncomfortable feelings instead of running away from them all the time, like I wasn't supposed to be. So I don't think much about drones, but I think the idea of sanitized warfare is misguided. That's a more polite way to say it. Question? Yeah, a woman in the back with glasses, right there.
Important for our young college students to be meditating in the way you describe your meditation happening. So how do we support them?
I think it's important for all of us, not just our young college students. I think I would say it's more important for the professors. No, seriously. I'm invited to go into prisons and to address the inmates in prisons. I won't do that unless I also get a chance to address the guards. I'm invited to go into schools, high schools and things, mostly in Europe. Here in the United States, there's a struggle to allow me to come into public schools. One, because I'm a Buddhist monk, and I'm a threat to the status quo in terms of religious views. But they use the idea of separation of church and state to not let me come in because, you know, they're afraid I might wrongly influence people. But I do get to go into a lot of private schools. And what I do is if I'm going to meet with the students, then I meet with the faculty. Because the faculty sets the tone. And when I say faculty, I also include the administration in that because the administration sets the tone for the faculty sets the tone for the students. So to focus only on the students is misguided. And yes, a disciplined spiritual practice rooted in self-reflection can be intensely beneficial to the vast majority of people, not to everyone. Question right here. No, hang on. The guy in front of you, and then you.
Do you see any purpose for military?
Sure. I'm not anti-military, by the way. I'm also not anti-war. I'm not pro-war either. I just know violence is not a solution. The military provides an incredible resource. I mean, look what happens when, look what happened when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. It was the military when they finally got the military in there, it was the military who established infrastructure, they established supply, they established health care. It's just instantaneous. They had the capacity to do that sort of work. And it happened during the tsunami. It happens during other crises, but the first thing they do is call out the National Guard. One question, that's it. So yes, the military does have a useful purpose. But we live in a society that's constantly being... we live in a society that is being unnecessarily induced with fear. The fear of the other. There is no other. You and I, we are not separate. We're not separate. You have more hair than I do. I wear glasses, you don't. I have a dress on, you wear trousers. But that's not who we are. It's to be willing to see the place we're connected, not where we're separate. The man behind you.
Yes. A recent report suggests that certain segments of American society...
12 words or less, 12 words or less.
The lifespan is shrinking rather than expanding, and
That's not 12 words. Come on. Help me out here.
okay, and
Now you're
heroin-
ignoring me. Come on.
Heroin addiction has become terrible in a lot of parts of the society.
So what's your question?
Do you have any response to that?
But it's not anymore. Access to heroin and heroin addiction isn't any more dramatic now than it was in 1950. We're just more aware that it exists because it's not being swept under the rug like it was. Charlie Parker, one of the greatest jazz trumpeters that's ever lived, he was at least as good as Miles Davis. See, I just tempered myself. He was at least as good as Miles Davis, although Miles didn't like him much. No, it's true. He didn't like him much. He died of heroin overdose. He died a junkie. What was the name? I'm the type of guy. Dion and the Belmonts. Dion DiMucci, who was the lead singer for the Dion and the Belmonts, he's a heroin addict. Seymour Hoffman died of heroin overdose. It's a common, accessible drug. What's more dangerous is not the heroin overdoses. What's more dangerous are the people dying from prescribed opioid addiction. That's what's becoming incredibly dangerous. And I see this a lot amongst people within the tribe that I belong to, the combat veterans, coming out of the hospital systems. Questions? Here.
How do you achieve peace and love through hatred and pain?
How do you achieve peace and love through hatred and pain? You don't. Next question. Over here, go ahead. Oh, Kenshin. Here. Here, we'll give you this thing. You want to stand up? You're going to do it here.
I do it here.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
This is it.
Thank you. Would you be willing to share what you were thinking, what it might be? Give me a guess. Good. That's one of the points. It is actually indicating time. I was hoping no one would see that I was looking on my watch. But it's one way that I can communicate the passing of time. In this way, I don't have to interrupt and really say, it's been 40 minutes, you might want to start with question and responses. But the other point, which is also very important, is that it is communicating to be present. So to notice how often we drift away with our thoughts, and the sound communicates to stop for a moment. And if you notice, Claude AnShin also stops for a moment, and then to continue on. And ultimately, this is something, if we want to get a hold of our conditioning, we need to be able to stop. If you never stop, then nothing's changing, because you always do what you always do. So it's what I would call the basic form of meditation. And one great tool in that is to pay attention to your breath. So take a moment, reconnect with your breath, and then move on. So we call this a bell of mindfulness, mindfulness being that quality. It's not a thinking quality, it's a quality of being present. And very often we are with our body in one place, but our mind is 1,000 other places, either in the past, already in the future. And we neglect to notice that we don't have either. I mean, we can think about the past, but it's gone and over. And we can think about the future, but it's not here. So we only have the here and now, and often we don't really utilize that power of the moment. So I can use it everywhere I am, even if I don't speak the language. I'm on here, I do, but coming recently from Colombia, I can do it there. I don't speak Spanish, but people get it. I mean, they often get it. Something is up. Somehow it's about paying attention, even if we never really explain beforehand what the bell is about. And I really appreciate that you asked, because often we don't dare to ask very obvious questions, Like, I've been in many events where people don't ask it, and afterwards they come to me and say, I didn't get it, what was up with the bell? and so I really appreciate it, just went right ahead. That's like, because I know I do the bell, and there's at least 90% here go, what's she doing? So, thank you.
In the back. Yes.
I'm a Vietnam veteran, as you are, and you said nothing was off bounds or out of bounds, so would you pick up the sword again to protect your partner should she be threatened by, let's say, ISIS, or would you defend her or resolve the religion?
No, I wouldn't pick up the gun again. I wouldn't do it. Because it doesn't, you can't achieve peace at the point of a gun.
But how can we solve
Wait, no discussion here. You asked a question, I gave you a response. All right? If you want to talk with me more, you're welcome to meet with me afterwards. Question? That I support certain people? Well, let's say people who are wrestling with the real cost of war. They're having a hard time making sense out of their life today. I don't attempt to make sense out of their life for them, but what I do is I give them a safe place, a structured environment to live in, and I give them certain tools that can help them to discover how to make peace with their unpeacefulness. Yep. In the red. No, but I tell you what I will do. Actually, we've been in meditation for this whole period of time. Meditation isn't one particular form or another. It's the way we live our life. But I will be, I don't know when.
Yes. Well, there are a couple of meditation opportunities this week with Claude AnShin. One is Thursday at noon, meeting in front of the library and the library steps. On Friday, is that also at noon? Yes. There will be walking meditation, also meet off the library steps. Anyone is welcome to come.
Okay. Go ahead, question.
Soon, you're going to have robots fighting on the battlefield for the Western world. What does that say about the future of peace and war?
Well, I don't know that that's true or not true, that there'll be robots fighting. That's an imagination at this point. And if I have something to do with it, which is what I have my life committed to, there won't be any war. I'm thoroughly committed to bringing an end to war in my lifetime. So I don't live with the proposition that war is inevitable. I live with and I don't live with the proposition that the only solution to violence is with more violence, because it's not a solution. So I attempt to engage with circumstances differently. You know, with the red hair.
Earlier you said,
What's it? Say it again.
earlier
Yeah.
said that have a disciplined spiritual practice
Yes.
that transcends theology.
Yes.
And how do you distinguish between random fantasy and attention to reality?
See, that's also more than 12 words, but
No, I counted.
okay. Now, say it all. Say the whole thing again.
Oh, maybe it was how do you distinguish that threw me for a loop.
Yeah, that's it. See, I know. What you wrote down is 12, but what you said was more than 12. But anyway, how do you distinguish? But that's the role that I play. That's the role that a teacher plays in the process. It's important when engaging in a disciplined spiritual practice that you are engaged with a community of like-minded people, and that you are engaged with, and that community of people is supported by an authentic teacher. And an authentic teacher is not someone who tells you what to do, but helps you to see how helps one to see how they're getting sideways, or challenges one's perception of what they believe reality is. So those elements are important in the process of awakening. But to wake up, one must be willing to deconstruct the whole fabric of their life. If I'm convinced that the only solution, the only way to achieve peace and security is through violence, I'm going to keep acting that out. If it's not a solution. It's never worked. It never will work. We don't live safer. Jesus, the high school I graduated from, man, it's in this tiny little farming community. I visited this high school some years back. They've got cameras in the hall monitoring the students, and the principal's all happy about that. They got metal detectors coming in. What, we're safer? Get out of here. You know, they passed a petition so you can open carry into the Republican convention. I mean, how insane is that? I mean, really, it's insane. And there's a lobby someplace there's a lobby someplace or petition someplace where teachers want to be able to carry guns into school so that they can protect themselves. I go, this is nuts. It's just crazy. I mean, really crazy. That's delusional. Now, I'm not going to deny the truth of what is, but it's still, the solution isn't more guns. The solution is to wake up to the roots of war, violence, and suffering in us, and so I do what I do. That's what's important. And find yourself a teacher and a community. Question?
How should America as a nation address its problem with obesity?
I have no idea. The question is, how should America address its problem with obesity? Eat less. No, really, I'm serious. I mean, this is interesting. Food is also an intoxicant. It's used as a social anesthetic. We use it. It's used to ease anxiety. It's used for comfort. It's used for all sorts of things that it's not intended to be used for. To eat more, to inform oneself. Oh, nice job. I didn't feed back. And to just be more conscious about how we eat. But we have to want to be more conscious. I mean, I'm 5'8". I used to be 5'8.5". I'm now 5'8". I'm getting older. I get smaller. At one point in time, and I'm like, when I was still 5'8.5", I weighed 226 pounds. I was a little fire plug, man. And I saw a picture of myself, and I just went, whoa, man, I got to do something about that. So I just began to. I had to be uncomfortable. I had to allow myself to be hungry. I had to be willing to just live differently. I had to be willing to do that. And in the process of being willing to do that, I'm way out at about 166, 168 now. It's lighter than I weighed. I can still wear the military uniform that I was given when I was 17 years old. I have to be willing to be uncomfortable. That's somebody. I heard somebody say, "What's peace with my unpeacefulness?" That's learning to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. You know, I haven't slept more than 2 hours consecutively in any night since 1967. I still don't. That doesn't mean that I can't get the rest that I need. It doesn't mean that I am. You know, we don't have to sleep 8 hours a night. We have to find out what is our sleep pattern. And then we have to be willing to adjust to our sleep pattern. I sleep the way I sleep. I get the rest the way I get it. But thinking that having fixed ideas about things is the trap that keeps us in these repeating cycles of suffering. Question there. Okay, okay.
If meditation is a lifestyle, how does one begin to live it?
Whoa, all right. If meditation is a lifestyle, how does one begin to live it? Is that the question? Yes. First thing in the morning, when you get up, before you do anything else. When you get out of bed, you make your bed as if you never slept in it. And you do that as a gesture of gratitude for the support that the bed has given you through the night that you've had in it. Then, what you do is, if you have a chair in your room, then you just sit in the chair, put both your feet flat on the floor, A comfortable place. As you sit with your back straight, your chin in slightly, and stable posture. 3 points of contact. And then you concentrate on your breath. You breathe in through your nose, you breathe out through your mouth. Do that for 5 minutes, first thing in the morning, and you do it for 5 minutes, the last thing before you go to bed. Do that every day for 30 days. Without question, if you miss a day, any part of that, if you miss any morning or any evening, if you miss any part of that, then you start over. You don't like sit in the morning, miss in the evening, sit in the morning, noon in the evening to make up for the evening before. Really, just do that. Just do it. Don't ask any questions. Don't decide. Don't distinguish. Just do that. And then see what begins to grow out of that commitment. And then the 2 days that I'm going to be offering public sort of stuff, come join me. Also, I'm a 21st century monk. I have an email address. No, it's true, man. I have an email. I have a cell phone. I didn't bring it. I do because I communicate with text message. Only I do it like this. I don't do it like this. You can have access to my email address. It's easy to find. You can buy one of those books out there. It's in the back of the book. The publisher would love it. The proceeds don't come to me. They go to support the work that I do in dealing with the topics of suffering. And I'll support you through the process. Your questions arise, write to me. I'll respond to you. That's one of the benefits of technology for me, is that I can do that. I can engage with you. But that's a place to start, and then we can build on that. But start there. This is the first place. There was a woman here who had a question. Okay, in the way back. Yep.
How would you say we could conquer that fear of this enemy we commonly seem to have?
How could I?
Conquer the fear that we seem to have about the enemy.
To realize that there really aren't any enemies. And there isn't any conquering the fear. The whole notion of conquering the fear is also warlike. I don't have to conquer my fear. I have to learn to live in a new and conscious relationship with my fear, because my fear is giving me viable information. Maybe. That fear that I have, although, may be conditioned to me. I may be conditioned into it. Like, I don't watch television anymore. Well, I don't watch the news or anything like that. Because everything's so blown out of proportion. Everything is so dramatic. I don't even watch the Weather Channel. I mean, really, really, if you ever listen to the storm of the century, it's like everything is so exaggerated. So we're being constantly bombarded with, it has to be greater and bigger and more huge. And so we're being constantly conditioned to be afraid. In this pilgrimage where I walked from Massachusetts to D.C., I was hosted in a church in New Jersey. And they were having a children's program in this church. And the pastor told us that we had to stay in our room while the children were there, because they didn't want us to have any access, because we were strangers to the children. They didn't want us to have any access to these children. And I remember I came out of the room to go to the bathroom, and one of those children was in the hallway. And I felt like I had done something horribly wrong, that I'd violated this child in some way just because they saw me. We're infusing the population with fear. And fear is simply, I infuse you with fear, and I have the possibility then to control you. I don't need to do that. I need to learn, I need to know that people are not my enemies. I'm working with a person now, I'm supporting a person now who's living in a refugee camp in France. Because there's this great influx of refugees from Afghanistan, from Syria, from the Balkans, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia, Croatia, Macedonia. They're coming from Africa, from the Sudan, from Nigeria. They're coming into Europe looking for freedom. There's this camp. There are 2 camps in France on the coast. One is in Dunkirk and one is in Calais. He's in the camp in Calais. They call it the jungle. And the they have private security forces that are around this camp, and they're routinely committing acts of violence against these refugees because these refugees are like homeless people. They're invisible in some way. And so together what we're doing, he's doing the action, we're formulating the plan together to bring these security people into the camp, to let them experience the humanity of the people that are living there, to get them into a place of being more connected. That's another way in which I work with people. To bring that humanity, to bring the reality of humanity into the equation. So there is nothing to fear except fear itself. That doesn't. My fear gives me information, but I have to also determine: is my fear delusional? Have I been infected somehow? That's why it's important then to have somebody, have a group of people that I can talk to, someone that I have trust in, that I can bounce this information off of. Last two questions. Well, 3 or 4 here. I'm there first.
Is it important that we search other planets for life?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I mean, I think there's something to boldly go where no one has gone before.
The reason I ask it is, I think if we found life on other planets, it might bring us together as humanity.
We don't have to go. We don't have to go to other planets to look for life. We can do that right here, right now. Not only do we look at other cultures, but look within the context of our own communities. We can exploit the other planets, the other life forms within our own community. People we have never interacted with before. That's what I think is most important. Okay, go ahead. It's impossible. We can't understand. We can't really understand each other. What we can do is accept each other. We have to be willing to be in conflict with one another, because you and I are not going to agree about everything. We need to learn to be in conflict with each other without that conflict degenerating into violence. So we have to find some way to be mature enough to have disagreements and be able to agree to disagree. I don't have to believe what you believe to be able to support and to trust you, to support you and value you. Okay, go ahead.
I work with young kids.
Yep.
And I see them being conditioned into a culture of violence.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if you have any advice on how someone who, not their parents, but, I work with them daily.
You be the model of peace that you want them to see in the world. That's the value that we have. I had another guy who served in Vietnam. He walked out because I didn't agree with him. I'm glad I'm not in his skin. ISIL's not the problem. ISIL is a manifestation of the larger problem, and that larger problem is how we are trapped in all of our ideas of things: greed, anger, ignorance, and how we attempt to how through. I hate that. There's a whole notion of exceptionalism, how we think that we have the solutions for everybody in the world. I get invited to travel all over the world. I'm in different cultures and societies all of the time. And one of the things I have to keep in mind is that I have no idea. I have to let them teach me what their world is like so that I can somehow be of support to them. Because that's why they're inviting me there. But there's also something that works through me that I don't quite understand, that people gravitate towards, and it's pragmatic, practical things. And for me, that's what Buddhist practice is. Doesn't matter what I believe, doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter what I say, it matters how I am. It's about being authentic. Be authentic with these children. But to be authentic, you need a disciplined spiritual practice to wake up to how you have been conditioned to be inauthentic. Because if we think we're being authentic, we're not. We're crap in our idea of authenticity. Last two questions, really. Last two, okay. Oh, hey. The question is, would I define Buddhism to be a religion or a more enlightened way of life? Both. But I wouldn't say a more enlightened way of life. Because we have the possibility within all the essential spiritual traditions to wake up. That is the point of spiritual teachings. I differentiate between religion and spirituality. Religion is the intellectualization of those spiritual teachings. The reality the spiritual reality of life is how I live those traditions, how I live them in my daily life. I mean, okay, so let's look at, in Buddhism we have precepts. We have precepts, we don't have commandments. Precepts are teachings. But people view them as commandments because we're conditioned in a certain way. First precept says, don't kill, don't let others kill, don't conduct any act of killing in the world or in your life. It doesn't say don't kill except. Fifth commandment says thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say thou shalt not kill except. Now, with the intellect, we get into the theology and we begin to find ways in which we can justify our actions, but our actions are rooted in ignorance and fear. And that's what spiritual practice is, to bring us into a conscious relationship with our ignorance and fear so that we can learn to live in a different relationship with that rather than allowing that to run our lives. Wow. Far out. Oh, the questions keep coming, but let me go here and then I'll come here. Go ahead.
Where do we go when we die?
I have no idea. You know, I don't concentrate too much on death because I'm completely occupied with living fully now in this moment. You know, when I die, we'll find out. Like that. Go ahead.
Would you please reflect on sexism and sexual violence?
Would I please do what?
Reflect or speak to us about sexism.
Well, I reflect on it all the time. Yeah. You want me to talk about it?
Yes.
Okay. On sexism and sexual violence. You know, I've had a lot of these conversations lately. Not a lot. I've been talking about this lately, because I don't watch television, but I watch Netflix. Yeah. Well, I mean, I like series and things, right? So I was watching. I watched all the episodes of the series Lost. And I don't know why. I just said, Kenshin and I watched it together, and once we were in it, we just watch our way through it. But one of the things that I discovered, this is curious to me. So, if I hit you, right, I'm in serious trouble. But yet, it consistently see in television where it's okay for women to hit men. It's happening all the time. Slap! And I'm going, well, wait a minute, what's up with this? This is not okay. Hitting is not okay. It's not okay for me to hit you. It's not okay for you to hit me. There's no justification for that. Okay? So, you have the right, as a woman, you have the right to dress any way you want. You should have the right to do that. However, if you go into a biker bar with a dress cut down below your breast line, and a skirt where if you bend over, you're going to show yourself, it communicates something. And although we would although we would like to think that you can do that and it ought to communicate that, it still does communicate that. So it's not okay for me then to just simply force myself on you because of the way you're dressed. That's sexual violence. So if I approach you, you say no, I need to understand, to respect that. I need to understand that. That being said, not everybody has that kind of information. Not everyone, we are not, even in today's society and culture, we're still yet not conditioned like that. Women are conditioned to present themselves as sexual objects. Men are conditioned to present themselves as objects of violence. We need to wake up to how we've been conditioned and be willing to live in conscious awareness of that. Sexism it's a difficult question for me because I don't discriminate based on gender. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, well, man, how come there's so many women around you? And I said, because I don't notice that they're women. I mean, I do. But I don't notice that they're women. I want people who are committed and who are dedicated, who are skillful, and who really want to do things different. And right now that happens to be more women than men. And I have a great deal of respect for that. When we're at the center where we're hosted, and I'm in the process of renovating a property, I'm doing hard manual labor, Kenshin's right there by my side. Sometimes. But sexism, we take sexism and we come to the issue of inequality or equality. And equality is not a fixed point. It's not everything being equal. If everything's being equal, that's a flat line, and that's just not how it works. Equality is more of a flexible point. There are some places where you are more competent than I am. There's some places that I'm more competent than you are. So it's about discovering what that balance is and allowing that balance to exist organically. And I have a problem with. I facilitated a retreat for veterans. And the last retreat I did, there were 120 people there, men, women, and family members. And they keep wanting to divide up these groups. They keep wanting to say, we'll do a retreat for men, we'll do a retreat for women because the issues are different. And I say, no, we need to do this together because we have to learn from each other what are the similarities of our experiences and what are the differences from our experiences so that we can become educated in this process. And that's spiritual practice. It's about being willing to wake up. Equality is not where everything is equal. Everything is in this arbitrary sense of everything is the same. That's opaque. There's no life in that. Equality is how do we work in balance together? This is the point. You should have every opportunity available to you based on your skills and your ability, not based only on your gender. You should have every opportunity available to you based on your skills and ability, not based on your color. But because you have been discriminated forever based on your gender and your color, then we have to have something in place to balance the scales a bit. So I'm in support of that. But at some point, it's got to come down to, I want people around me who are committed, who are talented, who are willing to do the work. That's, for me, is about spiritual practice. And I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your IQ is. I don't care what gender you are. I just care that you're committed and dedicated to take care of yourself. So that's how I deal with that topic. This is the last question, really, the last one. Really? 3?
Give me a second.
Here.
How do you find that other theologies debate with you about your teachings and practice?
How do I find what?
How other theologies debate with you about your teachings and your practice?
I do not know about other theologies. I mean, I do. I study. I'm learned. But how they interact with me is up to them, not up to me. What I'm constantly looking for when I engage with people from other traditions is, where do we connect? Where are the similarities, not where we are different? So, and that's one of the basic founding principles of Buddhist practice. Where are we connected? Where are we connected, not where are we different? And concentrate on that. Okay, there was... At some point I'm going to have to stop here, but go ahead.
So, how could someone
How could someone achieve acceptance?
Of their discomfort after a traumatic event.
You have to want to. There isn't one way to do that. And see, that's another point about Buddhist practice. There isn't one way. There are certain disciplines, there are certain forms, there are certain structures, but what those forms, structures, and disciplines do is they provide us a container to discover our way to waking up. And that's what you're talking about. That finding acceptance is the point of waking up. But it begins with wanting to. Okay, oh jeez. Okay, no really, this has to be the last two. Go ahead.
How to be at peace and assertive and everything that we need to be in the midst of policies that we just ignore.
You have to want to.
I do.
Well, then you know that. Then you have the answer. I mean, it's not. There's nothing tricky about this. Honestly, there's nothing tricky about this. Right? I am confronted endlessly with the real cost of war. I'm confronted endlessly with the people's addiction to the narcotic of violence. And yet, I am committed to this path. Unwaveringly committed. Even though there are times in my mind where I say, man, you know, this is just such a waste of time. People just don't get it. They don't want to get it. People are just... But then I come back to the story of the Buddha's awakening. Now, I don't know if the story is correct or not correct because it wasn't recorded on... It's not on flash drive or it's not on YouTube or... It's written down somebody's... I don't know. It may have happened like this, it may not. That's another thing I value about Buddhist practice. They don't say, it was like this. They say, well, this is what people wrote down. It might have been like this, it might not. But nonetheless, you have the story, work with that. I go, okay. The Buddha achieved great awakening. Shakyamuni achieved great awakening, where he received the honorific Buddha, which means enlightened. After experiencing the realm of enlightenment, which is nothing other than becoming conscious of the self within the self, Shakyamuni was, his conditioning, his suffering, sort of surfaced in a sharp challenge. In Buddhist practice, they refer to this as Mara. They give it an identity. And Mara said, okay, you have succeeded where no one else has. You've broken through your conditioning. You've achieved great awakening. I surrender. But you know, why don't you just stay here in this place? What do you want to go and talk with anybody else for? It's just a waste of time. These people are stupid, dumb. They don't care. They just want to destroy their lives. For an instant, just for an instant, the Buddha went, oh, maybe. Then he went, oh, no. This is not the point. Mara almost tricked him out. His suffering almost got him. He said, but his response was, according to what's been written down, I don't know, if I support one person in helping them to wipe the dust from their eyes, then this is the point. That's what I do. To listen to Michael say what he said in the introduction, that he had this experience just by sitting at the table with me. I mean, why do I wear robes? I'm wearing robes in a time where it's like it's really way not cool to wear robes. But I wear robes all the time. I walk down the street in robes, and you should see the looks that get thrown my way. Walking through the airport, I've had people spit at me in robes. It's not acceptable. Now people are taking off their robes because they don't want this visual association with their commitments. But you see, I wear robes because just by someone looking, just by someone seeing me, bam, it might be just a shock to help them wake up. That's why I do what I do. Okay, here.
Okay. Are there good people and bad people, or everybody's good and the conditioning makes some people appear
Well,
bad?
again, let me come back to Buddhist practice. In Buddhist practice, we see two coexisting realms. They're described as relative and absolute. They are not two separate things, and they're not one thing.
Now, in the relative world, this is the world of good, bad, right, wrong, yes, no. So there are people who are good, and there are people who are bad. But even within the bad people, they have the possibility of goodness, and within the good people, they have the possibility of badness. Because in the relative realm, all things exist all the time. In the absolute realm, we come to a place of understanding beyond the intellect, where good and bad become irrelevant. The absolute is not separate from the relative, nor is it one with the relative. Gesundheit. So, rather than focus, because good and bad are relative judgments, and your understanding of good and bad will be different from his, will be different from hers, will be different from hers, will be different from mine. That's the reality of our conditioning. So, although we see it in good and bad, it's important to understand that our understanding of good and bad is from our conditioning. Wake up to our conditioning and see what happens. Okay, last one.
Yesterday you taught me how to bow. I
Uh-huh.
wondered, can you teach all of us?
Well, I might. We'll see.
Can we stand up and
Let's,
do that?
no, I don't want to stand
How
up.
do you do that?
Why don't you just have a seat and we'll see how this unfolds. Okay. One last question. Go.
How do we stop violence against the earth?
That's a question you have to direct to yourself. How do you stop violence against the earth? Because as you stop, then that influences the people around you. It influences the world around you. So it's not how do I stop violence against the earth externally, how do I stop violence against the earth? So the question is, how do I commit violence against the earth, and how can that come to a close? How can I do that differently? Now, this is it. I'm done. One last question. No, really, it's time to finish now. I'm going to end in a way that's usual for me. Now, in the tradition in which I'm ordained, we bow a lot. Well, some people say we bow a lot. Bowing was one of the most difficult things for me to do because I saw bowing as an act of subjugation, much like shaving the head. When I was invited to ordain, I accepted. I said, do I have to shave my head? They said, yes. I said, oh, I don't know, man. Because my hair was my identity. Huh? Yes. But I tell you, you want freedom from delusion? I am officially, institutionally certified to shave your head. Come and see me tomorrow afternoon and we'll take care of that. But anyway, I saw bowing as an act of subjugation, like bowing down to something. And man, I'm not bowing down to nothing, man. You know? So in the monastery where I was at, we received real specific instructions because bowing is a disciplined practice and it's proven to be a great support to me. So the instructions are that I'm taught to press my palms together with my thumb tips touching, resting them on my knuckles. And then the tips of my longest finger are parallel with the tip of my nose. I'm not too rigid, like, oh! You get those Japanese samurai things. You ever watch those samurai movies? It's not stiffened like that. But nor is it too casual, like, let's see, what's happening? But it's precise. So I bow only at the waist, nothing else moves. The name of the position in Japanese is Gassho, G-A-S-S-H-O. Now, it provides us the capacity to really connect with one another. Like, we're used to greeting, shaking hands, they're doing something, But the physical part is not where we connect. We connect here, in the space between our gaze. So when we bow, it's like to really invite that intense connection. So in Gassho, I bow to Kenshin. And when I bow to Kenshin, it's in celebration of the gift of her presence. And to celebrate the example of her commitment. Kenshin has given up her country, her language, her customs, everything to wake up. I mean, Kenshin grew up on a dairy farm in Germany. And her father's response to her sister not necessarily wanting to get married, but have some children and hang out and live with this guy. And he said if she would get married, he'd buy her a dishwasher. No, it was a washing machine. But so, and she travels with me everywhere. She has an undaunted character, and it's an inspiration to me. And she has provided the container which has held us in meditation with that song of the bell. Thanks for asking that question. To Professor Denton Borhaug, to Michael Mellett, for giving me the opportunity to come to Moravian and to have to be able to address you, to be able to participate in the community here. I bow to you in gratitude. And to all of you, Buddhas to be, I bow in gratitude. And if there's anything I can do to support you on your path, do not hesitate to ask, or hesitate, ask me anyway. Please hold your seats for a few moments while I leave the room. Kenshin has a few announcements to make. I will be around the college till Friday. I'll be in a few different classes and doing a few things around. Please don't, if you see me around, you want to approach me, you want to ask me something, please do that. Don't let your projections or your ideas of who I am and what you can do deter you. Just approach me. But approach me, don't come up behind me and surprise me, because I'm still a bit jumpy about those sorts of things. Let me know who you are, let me see you. And I'm glad to engage with you in any way I can. Oh, wait, there's someone, I forgot, I don't want to forget this. We're being hosted by Professor Brill and his wife. Professor Bill, huh? That's Mr. Bill. And Professor Brill and his wife. They've provided Kenshin and I with a safe place to stay, and wonderful companionship, and really good food to eat. So in gratitude, I bow to you. I got to meet everybody on their block last night. Well, nearly. It's been a great pleasure. I look forward to seeing some of you around, and for those of you who are coming today, I deeply appreciate your respect and your participation in the evening. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
While AnShin is leaving, I'm going to keep it short. I also like to quickly extend my thank you to Professor Brill and his wife. And in that spirit of generosity, which is also the foundation of this invitation, I'd like to also encourage you, if you are willing to support us with a financial donation. There are 2 students who actually have offered to be at the door. But I will also say, if you don't, just thank them on the way out, and that's fine too. I mean, don't feel pressed, but it is the way how we support ourselves. I do want to say that also Moravian has been generous with giving a donation themselves. So just to say it at the end one more time, there is an opportunity to do this. Don't feel pressured. And then also feel free to look outside. There are some information materials. One is Claude AnShin's book. If you like it signed, just hang out a little bit afterwards. He will be willing to also sign copies. There's a way to leave contact information. There's a sheet. There's the most important teaching on a sticker, which says breathe, which can be really a very helpful reminder. Stick it on your computer or on your car. And there's a flyer, those sort of things. If you'd like to just read up on it or inform someone else, there is ways. There's a website, there's a Facebook page, so please feel free to do that. Otherwise, thank you very much for the great attendance tonight and for coming out and the great attention, and I wish you a safe way home. Thank you.